Since its founding in 1933, the Fletcher School has taken great pride in the accomplishments of its graduates. Fletcher alumni shaped the course of international affairs through their careers as diplomats, civil servants, industry executives, military officers, journalists, scholars, lawyers, researchers, and consultants. This opportunity might not have existed were it not for the doors opened by Fletcher graduates before them, the fabled Fletcher Network. Soon, you, our graduates, will have the opportunity, responsibility, and privilege to carry this Fletcher tradition forward. I'm delighted that Vikram Mehta, on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of his graduation from Fletcher, will address the class of 2019. Vikram Singh Mehta, one of the longest-serving members of our Board of Advisors, having joined in 2006, has been both a wise and generous supporter of the school. Vikram began a long and distinguished career in the energy industry in 1980, joining Phillips Petroleum in London as their senior economist. In 1984, he returned to India to join the government company, Oil India, as advisor for strategic planning. He joined Shell International in London in 1988, and over the next 24 years served in several capacities, including managing director of Shell Markets and Shell Chemical Companies in Egypt, and chairman of the Shell Group in India. Vikram is currently chairman of the Brookings India and senior fellow at the Brookings Institution in New York. He has a regular column in two leading newspapers, the Indian Express and Financial Express, and is the author of many published papers and journals. He was chairman of the Hydrocarbon Committee of the Confederation of Indian Industry, the CII, and a member of its National Council. He is an independent director of several companies, including Larsen & Toubro, the leading engineering construction conglomerate in India, Mahindra & Mahindra, the largest tractor and SUV manufacturer in India, and Thomson Reuters Founders, Share Company and Colgate-Palmolive, India. He was the recipient of Asia House's Businessman of the Year Award for 2010. He also received the Asia Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability's Award for Best Independent Director in 2016. In addition to his Fletcher degree, Vikram earned a BA honors degree in mathematics from St. Stephen's College at Delhi University and a BA MA honors degree in economics from Magdalen College at Oxford University. Vikram, please come forward to address the newest class of Fletcher graduates.
Dean Johnson, Ambassador Rice, Chairman of the Board of Overseers, Liz Tallow, members of the board of the Fletcher Board of Overseers, members of the Fletcher faculty, proud parents and families, my classmates of 40 years standing, if there are any here, and of course, above all, members of the graduating class of 2019. Thank you for this great honor. To be an alum of this wonderful institution is distinction enough. To be asked on this, the 40th year of my graduation, to share some thoughts about the school is honor in extremis. I have straddled the worlds of public service, private sector, and if the past 7 years as chairman of Brookings India and senior fellow of Brookings Institution allows me the claim, public policy research for now almost 40 years. During this period, I've given many public speeches, but few have been as challenging to write as this one. This is not because I sought to come up with words of wisdom. That is a responsibility that devolves on our commencement speaker. It is because of the significance of this occasion. I stand here, of course, to congratulate the class of 2019. This is a day to celebrate your tremendous achievement and hard work. You should all be so very proud of yourself. But I also stand here to pay a debt of gratitude. This invitation unleashed a flood of memories. It got me to introspect, to look back, and to reflect on the connect between my professional life and my time at Fletcher. It triggered a jumble of emotions and thoughts, and I had to actually head off to my little cottage in the Himalayas to clear my mind. My cottage is in the middle of a forest and wildlife sanctuary. There is no motorable access. The nearest neighbor is 25 minutes walk away, and the only noise is the twitter of birds and the rustle of nature. One is completely cut off from the cacophony of urban life. I came down to the plains 1 week later with one thought, and that was that Fletcher had made a singular, unique contribution to my professional and personal life. There had been, of course, other forces of influence. The two universities that I attended before I came to Fletcher, Oxford and Delhi, did also hone my faculty to think with discipline. They did also contribute to my intellectual self-confidence, and they certainly instilled in me the virtues of hard work, honesty, and the pursuit of knowledge. But it was Fletcher that provided me with the tools to understand the distinction between the who and the what, between who I am and what I am. It was Fletcher that stirred within me the subliminal sense that learning was not simply about creating a career, it was also about creating a life. I say it was subliminal because I did not articulate this sense then, and indeed for years thereafter. But what my sojourn in the mountains made clear is that Fletcher planted a seed that germinated slowly, incoherently, but which 2 years after I left Fletcher, when I found myself at a crucial professional crossroad, helped me decide to take a decision that was the most significant and, I will add, the best decision of my life. I've never had the opportunity to publicly thank Fletcher for this contribution, and I have this opportunity today, and that is why this occasion for me is so significant. I am here to congratulate and celebrate, but I'm also here to express appreciation. Let me share an autobiographical snippet that will help you all better understand the reasons for the latter, the reasons why I feel so appreciative of Fletcher. My family had been in public service for generations. My parents, and before them both my maternal and paternal grandparents, were in the government of India. My father's first day in office as one of four recruits into the just established Foreign Service of India was the first working day of India's independence. My mother joined the same service a year later. She was the first woman to join the Indian Foreign Service. But she had a short career. She was requested, a directive that was masqueraded as a request, to resign from the service soon after my parents married. The new government had not yet decided how to handle foreign service couples. It should come as no surprise to anyone, therefore, that with this background and the historical context, I grew up in a world that was centered around the political, economic, and international development of India. There was scarcely a dinner table conversation at home or a social occasion elsewhere that did not end up with everyone converging on a discussion about India and its future. My parents never discouraged my participation. They took me everywhere, other than, of course, to the most formal of occasions, and I had the great fortune to meet, albeit merely to exchange greetings, an extraordinary range of people, all bound by their common involvement in public policy. It should also be no surprise, therefore, that given this prism through which I saw the world, I had only one career aspiration: to follow in the footsteps of my parents, to join the government, and to leave an imprint on the canvas of India's polity. Fletcher fit very well into this personal goal. It was known in India for its multicultural, multidimensional, and intellectually stimulating environment. Its faculty were highly regarded, and its focus on public policy stood it apart from other graduate schools. I knew that a degree from Fletcher would stand me in good stead when I applied for the Foreign and Civil Service. And so it did. My application was successful, and I joined the government immediately after graduating from Fletcher. At the time, I was a contented, and I will admit, somewhat arrogant young man. I knew I was assured of 30 years or more of a steady but upward trajectory in public life. I knew I would not be rich, but I would, like my father, and before him, his father, influence the levers of public discourse and public policy. And I knew that, along with the 75 others who had been selected that year for the diplomatic and administrative service, I would now be the cynosure of every mother with a daughter of marriageable age. But this state of being did not last long. 18 months into my first job, I had a nagging sense that I had made a big mistake, that the civil service that I had joined was very different from the one that I had seen through the prism of my father's career, that the policy canvas on which I would work would be much smaller than the one my father had worked on, and that I would be further constrained by procedure and hierarchy. I had a feeling, a subterranean disquiet, that I had mortgaged my life to an inflexible and straitjacketed career. I will not go into details, but let me just say that those were very difficult days. I would be happy at work during the day. I had a very coveted first job, but in the privacy of my room at night, as I contemplated my future, I was filled with anxiety. Eventually, and for reasons that even today I find difficult to articulate, I resigned from the government. It would not be an exaggeration to say my resignation was met with bewilderment, astonishment, and in some quarters, anger. For this was the first time someone had resigned from the elite service so soon into their career, and that too without an alternative job or a plausible explanation. The only person who made light of it, at least after the initial shock, was my father. He was glad he would no longer be the focus of interest at social gatherings of ladies who hoped to have me as their son-in-law. I had been summarily removed from their list of eligible bachelors. 40 years on, and following a somewhat peripatetic career that included a 5-year stint in government when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister in the mid-80s, I do still, on occasion, ask myself, what inner force drove me to set aside the confusion in my head and to take the decision I did? What gave me the inner confidence to follow my instinct? What gave me the courage to step off the treadmill of a career that guaranteed social success, public recognition, and, with a measure of luck, and in time, power and authority? I will not pretend to suggest that I have all the answers, but I will say that my 1 week in the mountains made clear to me that the answer lay in large part on the learning that I imbibed at Fletcher, both inside and outside the classroom 40 years ago. I do not need to tell you this, but Fletcher is a unique establishment. It is not just the buffet of subjects that it offers, a fascinating and diverse set of courses. It is not just its wonderful faculty, academics who have not only achieved renown in their area of expertise, but whose experience, values, and style compel students to look beyond themselves, to question conventional wisdom, and to set their goals within the larger context of the problems facing humanity. And it is not just its diverse, cosmopolitan, intelligent student body, a community, a shared community from all walks of life, nationalities, cultures, and intellectual traditions, but bound by a common wish to play a role on the world stage, to leave an imprint, to make a difference. No, it's a combination of all these factors, the curriculum, the faculty, and the student body that sets Fletcher apart from other educational institutions. And I was a beneficiary of this combination. I came to Fletcher, as you've heard, with a degree in mathematics and development economics. I wanted to do something very different, something that gave me a handle on contemporary issues. OPEC had ratcheted up the price of oil a few years before I joined Fletcher. Energy and oil were on every government's policy agenda. Fletcher offered a raft of interesting courses on this subject. The mineral resources under the seabed was also at that time a subject of considerable interest. Who had the rights to these resources? What rules and regulations should be applied? Fletcher had some of the greatest experts teaching us the law of the sea. I experimented, I sampled, and eventually I chose to focus on energy with a subsidiary interest in multilateralism pegged around the law of the sea. My major thesis was written under a professor at Harvard on barter trade, oil for commodities, with a focus on Iran. I was hugely fortunate in the professors that I had. I recollect with admiration the pedagogic style of Professors Rubin, Cohen, Ma, and several others, who did not limit the conversations to the specific of a particular course, but who allowed intellectual meandering and dialectic debate. They encouraged me to step outside the framework of my background, tradition, and convention, and to contemplate the world through a different lens, to a very different lens than the one that had been handed to me by my parents. My most memorable recollections are of my friends and classmates. I had an extraordinary set of friends, clever, iconoclastic, ambitious, but human. I will not name them because some are still in the public eye, and one can never tell how social media might interpret my remarks. But they were friends because they never defined themselves by the narrow identities of class, culture, or nationality. We were defined by a common zeal to make a difference. I picked up a great deal from these friends, and not least the fundamental that there was no one pathway to public life. One did not have to be in government to make an impact. There were other avenues that could lead one to the same destination. It was this combination, this unique attribute of a Fletcher education, that gave me the courage and the confidence 2 years later, when my head and heart was spinning in opposite direction, to ask some basic questions. Questions like, what had in fact determined my career? My lineage or my interests? What was more important, the journey or the destination? What did I really want? What did I really believe in? I know these questions sound deep and abstruse, but take it from me, when one is in a confused state, it helps to concentrate on simple, basic, but profoundly personal questions. I told you that Fletcher planted a seed that germinated, in the shape of these questions. It was in the endeavor to answer these questions that I found the strength to walk into my boss's room one morning with my resignation letter. I owe Fletcher much for planting this seed within me. I owe Fletcher, of course, my career in energy. Following my resignation from the government, I decided to make a career in this area. The subject fascinated me. It straddled the world of politics, business, technology, and society. It called for a strategic mind, and it played out over the long term. I pegged my application to energy companies around the courses that I had taken at Fletcher and my thesis on Iran. I was hired by Phillips Petroleum 6 months later, and that was the start of a 30-year-long journey that took me around the world, that saw many twists and turns, and which allowed me to influence the direction of energy policy in India. It was also a journey that threw up many unexpected challenges, problems that brought into sharp relief the value and relevance of a Fletcher training. Two examples will hopefully illustrate this point. Early in my career with Shell, as the London-based director of the Royal Dutch Shell companies in the Middle East, I found myself unexpectedly in Al Jubail, an oil town on the eastern seaboard of Saudi Arabia, at the height of the First Gulf War. I was made responsible for the evacuation of the Shell staff working in the refinery and petrochemical plants in Al Jubail. It was an unexpected challenge which no business school can train you for. I believe I managed that, but because of the softer skills of negotiation, persuasion, and multicultural sensitivity that I was taught at Fletcher. I will never forget the frightened faces of otherwise hardened, middle-aged men who would think nothing of working in a desert under a blazing sun, scared out of their wits by the rumors of an imminent Scud missile attack from Iraq. The second example is more personal. Only I can tell you what a challenge it was and why I believe it showed up the strength of my Fletcher education, or of a Fletcher education. You will all recollect Mumbai came under attack in November 2008. I was in my flat with my 12-year-old daughter when the Hotel Oberoi across the road from my flat was bombed and taken over by the terrorists. My daughter's bedroom, which overlooked the hotel, was taken over by the Indian security forces. A few hours later, the terrorists discovered the location of these forces, and my flat came under fire. I was crouched with my daughter in the back room at the same time that I was also on the phone to the Shell staff in Mumbai, who were looking for verbal assurance from me that Shell had prepared itself for any eventuality, including the outbreak of a full-scale conflict between India and Pakistan. Ambassador Rice, I know you have dealt with the most extraordinary of challenges, but I can tell you I've seldom faced a greater test of leadership. To reassure staff on the verge of catatonic panic, to manage a frightened daughter, to meet the demands of a gaggle of heavily armed men, all the while that bullets were ricocheting off the walls of the room adjacent to where I was crouched, tested every aspect of my character and leadership. I believe that I managed, but again, I want to pay a compliment to Fletcher. There are few schools around the world that can train you to grapple with such unexpected and complex problems than Fletcher. Graduates of 2019, the world that we live in today is profoundly more risky than the world I entered 40 years back. My world was challenging, as the two incidents I've described should make clear. But it was not as challenging or risky as that which you face today. Your world, our world, is connected but polarized. It is wealthy but unequal. It is on an unsustainable growth path. It faces many problems, most of which are not easy to define. The leaders know what needs to be done, but there are few around who have the political will or the statesmanship to implement the solution. The pressures are simply enormous and unprecedented. My autobiographical snippet will not help you navigate this world. It will not help you navigate your way through this thicket. or to provide you guideposts to find relevance in this complex algorithmic universe. But I do hope that through this paean of praise for my alma mater and yours, you will draw strength in the knowledge that you will receive your degree tomorrow from a truly unique institution, and that you are perhaps better prepared than most of the other students graduating this month to face the multitude of challenges that you will inevitably face. Let me end as I started. First, thank you, Dean Johnson, for giving me this opportunity to thank Fletcher for the enormous contribution that it made to my life. I have much to be grateful for. Thank you also for inviting me to congratulate and celebrate the achievement of the graduating class. The class of 2019, this is your day, and I'm delighted and honored to be here today to celebrate your joy. Good luck and God bless.
Thank you, Vikram, for those inspiring and obviously very heartfelt words, and thank you for all that you've done for the Fletcher School over the years.